We move next to a session with Shout ambassador Jamie Windust. It's okay not to be okay. Jamie is an award-winning non-binary writer, public speaker and model from London. They've written for The Independent, Gay Times, British GQ, Cosmopolitan and Into More, and were named as one of London's most influential people in the storytelling category by the Evening Standard.
Hi, I'm here to talk about the fact that it's okay not to be okay. And I'm chatting with the author, Jamie Windust, and I'm also joined by Shocker. Thank you guys so much for joining the Evening Standard's London Minds event series. Are you both there? Can you both hear me? Are we okay?
All good.
Yeah, all good.
We're in.
I'd love just to hear briefly about both of your stories. So Jamie, maybe we could start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I am Jamie Windust. I am contributing editor at Gay Times, author and model and consultant within the fashion industries. My background within the media kind of came from university. I studied fashion business. I realized there was a gap in the market around trans inclusive stories within the media, showcasing not just the sad times of the LGBTQ plus community. And I try and do that in my job, in whatever role that I take, whether that's a consultant or with my book. It's about showcasing the kind of multifaceted layers of transness and queerness, because growing up and throughout my life, it's been a very kind of rocky road with representation and showcasing the reality of what it's like to be trans and queer in this country. So yeah, that's kind of what I aim to do with my work.
Great. And Shocker, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I go by the name of Shocker. I'm an artist from North London. I'm also a mental health advocate. How I became a mental health advocate was I was in a grind group. There was 3 of us, a trio. And yeah, we did amazing things. We toured with Skepta, we toured with Chipmunk, we toured with Diversity. We also met Rihanna, Drake in our early days. And then in 2010, we got dropped from our label. Then I spiraled into a deep depression off the back of that. I ended up getting sectioned and put in a mental health hospital for the first time. Then I relapsed and got sectioned and put in a mental health hospital 2 times after that, so 3 times altogether. And then since then, I've been on a journey just building myself back up and helping people with my story. And that's how I got into the position I'm in now as a mental health advocate.
Wow. I mean, what a story. I think the thing that's interesting there, and Jamie, I think this applies too to what you're saying about the real life experience of what it's about to live. It's the idea that we sometimes can struggle to come to terms with addressing our mental health.
Yes.
And the problem around the way that people deal with that and the way that we discuss it in public.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a level of with mental health, especially in this country, there's that, people always say that we don't talk about mental health enough. And I think we do talk about mental health, but only at the surface level. And I think there's a level to which we need to be able to open up discussions around mental health, about symptoms, around breakdowns, around sectioning, around the actual what it's like to be in those episodes of mental health, and not just tell people to put a smile on and go for a walk, because there's only so much that can help. There's only so much that things like that can actually benefit people. And I think work that mental health advocates do with campaigning government, campaigning the NHS, trying to actually create services that are impactful, will create conversations around mental health that are much more layered. Because I think at the moment it's quite surface level.
Is that something you would agree with, Shocker, in your experience? I feel like we're not really going deep enough when we ever have these chats.
100%. And the stigma around it being embarrassing to speak about it is really detrimental, because I got a call last week about a friend of mine. Someone told me if I've spoken to this friend, and I said, yeah, I bumped into him in the park like a week ago. And they said, you need to check up on him. So fast forward a week later, he's phoned me and I said, yo, where are you? He said, I'm sectioned. I'm in a mental health hospital. He actually called me this morning from hospital and he said something to me that made me think. He said that I don't think I'm going to speak about this experience I've just had, me being in hospital now, being sectioned. He's like, I don't know how you're so open about it, but I don't think I'm going to tell people about mine. I don't know how to begin to start that conversation. And that just made me think, like, how many other people are in the situation that he's in, being section or come out of being section, and they can't have that conversation. So having deeper, in-depth conversations has to be normalized, because it was just sad hearing him saying that he's gonna, pretend like it never happened and just, carry on with life.
I guess what it comes down to, there's an enormous amount of shame that seems to be
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, why do you think that is, and how can we overcome that? Because, any emotion can, it can be difficult to just even address it with yourself. And I suppose it's that idea of admitting it feels like it feels like it's an admission rather than just a state of play. And that seems quite destructive.
I think there's shame mainly around the youth kind of age group. I think the adult age group kind of understand it. They know what it's like to take medication. They're probably on some sort of medication themselves. But the younger age group look at it like, oh, why are you taking medication? Something's wrong with you. Like he said a word to me. He said, people are going to think I'm tapped. And tapped, slang word in the youth culture, means people are going to think I'm mad, basically. And
right.
Yeah, exactly. And that was one of his fears. Like, if I tell someone I just come from a mental health institute, being in hospital, the first thing they're going to think is, oh, what's wrong with you? And I don't want you to be around me. And you might bring whatever your problems is onto me. So, I fully understand where he's coming from. That's why I took the time out to talk to him on the phone. Every time he's called me, I've picked up. I haven't tried to ignore him, because I know how important it is to have someone you can reach out and speak to. I never had that when I went through my situation. I was literally alone. So it's only right that I can change that around and be there for someone else.
Yeah, I guess there's such an important need to have a connection with someone. That must be true too for you, Jamie. To be able to share your experiences with people and just to be sort of confident enough to open up.
Yeah, definitely. Over last year, I was in situations where I found myself needing mental health services that I'd not ever contacted before. So in terms of like with the NHS privately, and there was no suitable option, I think, for trans people or queer people. That it was very kind of centered around, and I think the intention is nice, but it's centered around kind of an everyone is welcome, and I think that's fine. That message as a standpoint is obviously brilliant, but you can't use that to ignore the intersectionality of people's experiences. For example, my experiences with sexual assault services and going through the kind of criminal justice system like that is a real impact to mental health, because the incident itself obviously was damaging, but I actually found the lack of support and lack of services available as traumatizing, because it just created that complete isolation that you cannot do what everyone else is able to do and access these services. You are just completely ostracized, which leads people to either not seeking help or having to go privately when they can't necessarily afford it. It's an incredibly isolating experience.
Yeah, and I suppose that's one of the real difficulties that I suppose the health services are facing, which is that everyone's experience is going to be different, and the way that we all experience life is different. I mean, Shoppy, you just there, when you explain the slang, and I have to say, for me personally, that's just not a word that I've heard before.
Yeah.
Goes through life in a different way, right? And they're about when you're a bit older, it's easier to accept it. And I think that me personally, when I was in my late teens, I went through I struggled with my mental health quite severely. Now that I'm 30, everything's a work in progress, right? But I feel like I'm quite settled. But I'll say this to you guys that on camera, and I haven't met the two of you before, and I feel comfortable that I can do that. Whereas I couldn't tell my closest friends, because there was just so much there that there was such a burden with it. So I suppose, sorry, this isn't a question, I suppose, but it's that idea that if the health services are going to struggle to be as inclusive as they can, because they might not address my situation, they might not address your situation. And, you know, as you were saying there, Jamie, there's not enough there that's specific for the trans community. This has to be something that we do as a society, right?
Yes.
So what steps can we take as individuals, do the two of you think, in order to sort of be ourselves to help sort of show the way for other people? And what can people do at home if they want to work this through and help effect a change that's necessary?
Well, what's helped me, I can only speak for myself, what's helped me, hopefully that helps someone else, it's just understanding that everyone's going through something. Some people think that I don't want to share because I might be the only one that's going through this thing, and because we dress our lives up like it's so perfect. So we feel like I don't want to share this because I might be the only one that's going through this, and I'm going to look weird, and you're not going through something like this, so you won't understand, but everyone's literally going through this. Like, it's weird that I'm having this conversation with you because I literally had 2 mental health kind of issues this week. First, I had my friend that I told you about that called me this morning from hospital, and I also had a friend that broke down to me 2 days ago, and I never expected it because like he's such a happy-go guy, but like he called me and he said if I'm around, and I said yeah, I'm around. He said, can you meet me at the local park? I've got a park literally 2 minutes from here. And I went there to meet him, and he was literally breaking down, crying. And basically the main cause of that was the pressure from parents. He was saying that he broke down 2 days before he came to see me at home, and the first thing his mum said is, "Why are you embarrassing me?" Wow. He said she was saying, if I take you into hospital to get sectioned now, it's going to be an embarrassment on my behalf. Basically, when all her friends ask her, how's your son doing and where is he, she has to explain that he's in hospital. But she shouldn't be looking at it like that. She should be thinking that he's getting the help that he needs.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that comes back to something you were saying earlier, Jamie. This idea of empathy being really important, but also perspective that we have on the way that we deal. You were talking earlier, Jamie, you mentioned about like sectioning, for example, the messaging that's around that. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think with the messaging, it's just really important that there's a way in which, you know, we categorize things in our brains as moral or immoral, and therefore we decide what is moral and what is immoral, and therefore we apply empathy based on that decision. So therefore some people who have, you know, tendencies to think that certain groups of people are immoral, they will not provide empathy to those people. And I think what needs to be done is, you know, as is said, is we all go through these situations. This is where the blanket statement of we're all in this together, although it's a bit embarrassing, is important, because we do all go through these things, and intersectionalities should be listened to, but we cannot escape the fact that, you know, my experience is obviously different from your experience, but we may have similarities. And in the past year, I found that, you know, my own barriers with speaking to people, with especially men, speaking with men, that I would initially just think there's nothing similar in our experiences here, but actually we are able to really help each other because we can just listen, and we can just use that time to listen to each other. I think listening is really important. I think when people listen, they think that they have to offer advice, but that's actually not always the most helpful thing. If you can just sit with someone and allow them to speak to you and to show that you are listening, it's you know, it's worth a lot more than a lot of people think it is worth.
I think that's sorry, after you, Shocker.
No, I said agreed. I agree with every word.
Yeah, I think that it's such a pertinent point, because, I mean, just to sort of follow on from that, Jamie, when you say listening, it's because you're right. There doesn't always need to be a solution. There doesn't always need to be a response. Sometimes it's just being able to say something. I guess it's the old cliche about getting it off your chest, but just being able to know that you could say it without that fear of what the response will be. It's just, I think sometimes maybe that does, when you're opening up and you're talking to someone, you're always conscious of how they're perceiving it, but also what they might say back. And I think that can be a real barrier. I guess, it's just about making sure that people are there. What kind of resources do you guys think are out there that are useful for people who are going through this and are maybe finding it difficult to reflect on themselves and where they're at with their own mental health?
That's tricky for me to answer because I never actually used any resources to help me back in my recovery. Music helped me. Yeah, it was mainly music. And like in my community and amongst my peer groups, like musicians are they're like our fathers, if you know what I mean, because most of my friends never had that in their life. And so musicians, and we look up to like artists, and especially artists that have messages in their music and try to guide the youth. So most of my healing came from listening to like certain artists that, like there's an artist called Kendrick Lamar, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah. I love Kendrick.
But like he helped me so much. He had a project called Section 80, and he was just talking about being yourself and staying true and being vulnerable. I never ever heard men speak like that before. And that's what inspired me to want, because everyone always says to me, what inspired you to want to come out and share your story? Because I wasn't going to before. I was going to take the route that my friend took this morning. That I was just going to pretend like nothing happened. But after listening to Kendrick and watching him share his story, and it inspired me. And then, I've just been on this journey since.
I think, Jamie, I was going to ask you what resources you think are out there, or actually just because of what you've just said there, Shocker, about what you personally found helpful for you. Jamie, what have you found helpful for you in learning to address your own mental health?
I think it's about, there are the obvious ones. So for example, like, unfortunately in the UK, LGBT services, especially with like sexual assault services, are quite limited. So there's an amazing group called Gallup, who are the kind of main LGBTQ plus focused sexual assault service in this country, that help you speak to the police, help you kind of, do everything for you, which is they're really brilliant. And in terms of me, what I realized was in my work and in my life, I am quite used to being vulnerable outwardly. So in terms of writing, in terms of, things like this, like I'm quite used to just being quite open with people that I don't know. But what I found was I'm not doing the same thing with myself all the time. It almost was a bit like I talk the talk, but I wasn't walking the walk. And what I found the best thing for me was to just be really vulnerable with myself and take it really back to basics. And be like, what do you enjoy doing? I realized I have no hobbies. I didn't have any hobbies that I hadn't monetized. And so I was like, right, just do something. No one else needs to know about this. You can just do it. So like lockdown's been an aid to this, but I've got really into like cooking, got really into decoration, got really into exercise, just like things that I had always dismissed before. It's just kind of like things that people in their, no offense, early 30s do. And, I was still kind of quite living this like, I'm in my early 20s, I can be rebellious. And I was like, well, actually, no, you need to look after yourself and don't just not do things because you think they're boring. They're actually going to keep you sane and keep you grounded and have a routine. So I've just got back into things that I enjoy for me.
And I think that probably is really important. And a bit like you were saying there with the music shop, I know for me personally, during lockdown, I found, and living on my own, I found that just getting back into music, it's something that I used to do when I was in my early 20s, and I kind of just let it slip. But then just sort of just as you were saying, Jamie, about just finding something that you enjoy that gives you back. And it doesn't always have to be about that idea of what your outward image is. Sometimes you're this person because people think you are this person and because you presented yourself as that person. And then you let some of the other stuff that actually still you really, really enjoy, but because it doesn't fit in this broader image of you, you kind of let that stuff go. And I think sometimes it's important to bring that stuff back in so that you can feel like more complete as the person you actually are, rather than the person I guess you're presenting yourself to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we're slightly running out of time. Is there anything else that you feel like an important message that you'd like to sort of share with people about speaking up and acknowledging their own state of mind and things?
I think one thing I'd say is, there's going off of what you've just kind of mentioned about what people perceive you to be. I think in terms of resources, social media is a great resource for people nowadays to find like-minded people sharing their stories. But I think one caveat to that is we shouldn't expect the people that we see online to constantly share their stories. It has to be an autonomous decision. You have to decide that it is right for you and not just right for other people. So I'd say be mindful of that when approaching people online. Cherish the stories that people share, because it takes a lot, as Shoka was saying, it takes a lot for us to share these stories. And just be gracious with people who take the chance online, especially to showcase their life, because not is all as it seems, as it were. If that's the right phrase. So yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Shoka, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to echo that. I would like to say social media is like a great resource. I found like a whole tribe of people on there. I've even found some amazing Instagram accounts that showed me so much detail about what I went through. Because when I got sectioned, I didn't really quite understand it. And I didn't really want to understand it at the time. But I found these amazing accounts of other people that's been sectioned and been diagnosed with what I got diagnosed with. They've just given me all this insight to what I've been through. So social media is a great place. You just got to look for it. There's like so much people out there.
Fantastic. I suppose just to kind of conclude, I think the one thing that's really come out of this conversation for me is that idea of how important empathy is. And as you just said there, Jamie, as well, it's important to be gracious with people because, we don't know what everyone else is going through, but we probably know that everyone else is going through something because it's just something that affects us all. And I guess that comes back to the title of this little series. It is okay not to be okay. And we just have to recognize that in others as well. And I think if we can do that, hopefully, I suppose, there's a level of honesty to the way that we deal with other people that should make it easier, I guess. And just to say, I just want to say an enormous thanks to you both for coming on here and talking to me about this. I really, really appreciate your time. And it's been really, really fascinating to hear it from two different perspectives. Thanks so much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.